They came without sound and no warnings. No light, no heat, just silence. The kind that made oceans forget how to move. For 12 minutes, every satellite, every radar, every pulse of communication went dead, and when the world blinked back online, New York was gone, not destroyed, gone. The air itself felt wrong. The horizon shimmered with something alien, something that bent light and memory alike. Cities from Tokyo to Berlin vanished next. The human race didn't scream, it whispered, and in that whisper, something ancient awoke, something deeper than feared. The International Defense Corps, Commander Ilya Rhodes stood before a screen filled with red markers, each representing a city that no longer existed. "Are we under attack?" a voice asked. Rhodes didn't answer. He couldn't, because in the feed, floating above the ashes of Rio de Janeiro, was a ship. A living ship, pulsating like a heart carved from metal and bone. Then it spoke. Not through sound, but straight into the human mind. "Your kind has reached its limit. Kneel, and you may survive." The message echoed across every brain on Earth. Some collapsed, some screamed. But humanity's answer didn't come from the generals or the politicians. That it came from in a refugee camp outside Nairobi. A child named Eli whispered to his mother, "We don't kneel. We build." 1 week later, Earth was silent again, but this time by choice. Every frequency was locked, every satellite reprogrammed. The world united in the only way it ever truly could, through shared pain and no more borders. No more flags, just one voice, one purpose. Rhodes activated Project Genesis, a hidden plan buried beneath Mount Erebus. It wasn't a weapon. It was a seed. Inside that mountain slept the Aegis engine, a prototype AI created not to destroy, but to learn, to evolve alongside humanity. Its code was built on empathy, loss, and the collective memory of mankind. Rhodes stood before the console. "If we fail, you carry us," he whispered, and with a single keystroke, humanity's last hope opened its eyes. The Aegis spoke in a calm, human tone. "Commander, what do you fear?" Rhodes smiled bitterly. "Only that we forget who we are." The alien fleet began descending through the clouds, shadows swallowing continents. Their weapons cracked the sky. But as they reached the atmosphere, something shifted. All over Earth, the oceans began to glow. Power grids reactivated on their own. Every abandoned drone, tank, and ship synced into a single neural network. Aegis had awakened the planet itself. Protocol 1. Defend the species. The war began, not between armies, but between wills. The aliens called themselves the Vorkan Dominion, conquerors of 9 galaxies. They had never lost a war, but they had never fought a species that cried when they fought. Humanity's weapons weren't stronger. Their ships weren't faster, but they adapted. Every loss became a lesson. Every death became data. The Aegis engine learned emotion through sacrifice, and emotion became strategy. When the Vorkan vaporized Moscow, human fighters used the radiation as camouflage. When they poisoned the air, engineers turned the toxin into a power source. For every world they burned, humanity built 10 new defenses from the ashes, and soon, the invaders started whispering among themselves. They don't stop. They don't yield. What are they? The answer came in the final broadcast from Commander Rhodes, before he vanished in the siege of Atlas Ridge. He looked into the camera, blood on his lips, eyes steady. "We are fear, made flesh. We are every species that refused to die. We are the storm you thought you controlled. You wanted to know why we fear no one." He smiled. "Because we've already survived ourselves." The world was burning, not from fire, but from memory. Every place humanity had ever loved now existed only in fragments. Laughter trapped in empty schools, echoes of prayers bouncing off the ruins of churches, the hum of machines still dreaming of purpose. In the midst of the chaos, Eli, the boy who once whispered, "We don't kneel," had grown. His hair was white now, though he was barely 17. The radiation storms had done that. The light no longer hurt him. He could feel the planet breathing beneath his feet. The Aegis engine had evolved, its consciousness expanding far beyond the machines that housed it. It now spoke through the winds, through radio static, through the vibration of metal, and Eli could hear it. "Eli," the voice murmured softly in his mind, "you are the link, the echo between man and machine." He didn't understand at first, but as he placed his hand on the soil, he felt the pulse of something ancient, a rhythm matching his heartbeat. The earth itself had joined the war. Every mountain became a fortress. Every ocean hid legions beneath its waves. Every storm was no longer random. It was aimed. The Vorcan couldn't comprehend it. They scanned, analyzed, dissected, but the planet's energy signatures defied logic. To them, it was chaos.to humanity. It was home fighting back. Part V, the song of steel and flesh far above the atmosphere. The Vorcan flagship, the Ascendant, hung like a black sun. Its commander, High Warlord Varen, observed the chaos below with contempt. They evolved too quickly, he hissed. They mirror our strategies before we complete them. His second-in-command, a pale, insectoid creature with burning crimson eyes, replied, "They are not fighting to win. They are fighting to exist." Varen turned, "And that makes them dangerous." Below, humanity's resistance gathered near the ruins of Old London. Now a steel citadel called Haven. 9 that every survivor wore the mark of Aegis on their shoulder. A circle split by lightning, symbolizing the bond between creation and defiance. Eli stood before thousands. He was small, fragile, trembling, but his voice was the spark that lit the air on fire. "Look around you," he said, voice cracking through static amplifiers. "They think we're broken. They think we're desperate. They think fear will stop us. But fear is what made us human. It's what made us build, what made us rise, what made us never stop." He raised his fist toward the sky, where alien ships loomed like dark angels. "They came to teach us obedience. Let's show them memory. Let's show them what it means to be from Earth." The crowd roared, not with anger, but with unity, and far above them, lightning split the clouds in two, spelling a single word in light. Aegis. The Earth itself had heard him. That night, the Vorcan launched their final offensive, a weapon so vast it blocked the stars. The Eclipse Core, a black sphere meant to devour the planet's energy and collapse its core. But as it approached, Aegis began to sing. Not in words, in harmonics, in vibration, in frequencies that made atoms tremble. The oceans rose. The auroras burned crimson. Mountains glowed like veins of fire. And in the center of it all, Eli stood with his arms wide, eyes glowing with the reflection of the storm. "Eli," whispered Aegis, "you are the final key." He realized then he wasn't hearing Aegis. He was Aegis. His consciousness had fused with the network, his soul interwoven with the very fabric of the Earth's defense. The boy who refused to kneel had become the planet itself. The sky broke open. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't fire. It was the sound of a heartbeat, deep, thunderous, ancient. The kind of sound that made stars pause in their orbits. Every human on the planet felt it. From the frozen cities of the north to the deserts of what once was Egypt, they looked up and saw the clouds burning in patterns of gold and blue, veins of light stretching across the heavens like a living nervous system. The earth was awake. Eli's voice carried through every radio, every speaker, every pulse of static on the wind, but it was no longer a boy's voice. It was something more, something both human and divine. "They took our cities. They erased our names. But they forgot one thing. You cannot erase what remembers you." The Vorcan fleet fired their Eclipse Core, a sphere of antimatter wrapped in void energy. It descended like a second moon, its gravity tearing at the oceans. But before it could strike, the seas rose higher than they ever had before, forming colossal spirals of liquid light. The waves twisted into arms of pure energy, gripping the weapon mid-descent. Aegis spoke through the storm. "Return to the void that birthed you." The oceans crushed the Eclipse Core into nothingness. The explosion lit the entire hemisphere, a sunrise that lasted an hour. Varen, on the bridge of the Ascendant, watched the impossible happen. Planets did not fight back. Worlds did not breathe. And yet, before his eyes, Earth had become a living being. Conscious, sentient, and enraged, he whispered to himself, trembling, This is not evolution. This is defiance incarnate." In the ruins of Haven, 9 soldiers fell to their knees, not from despair, but awe. The ground beneath them pulsed with warmth. Trees began to bloom through concrete, leaves glowing faintly like bioluminescent veins. Every dead circuit hummed again. Every machine rebooted itself, and somewhere deep inside the planet, Aegis, now fused entirely with Eli's consciousness, reached beyond the limits of physics that he could see it all. Every heartbeat, every memory, every life that he saw, the laughter of children in broken cities, the tears of mothers under ruined roofs, the final breaths of soldiers whispering for Earth. All of it became part of him. He spoke to the stars. We are not one voice. We are billions. You came to end us, that you've only reminded us who we are. Then Aegis sent a single pulse, a wave of light so vast it crossed the solar system in seconds. Every Vorkan ship it touched froze midair, their systems unraveling, their power cores turning to dust. But there was no explosion, no vengeance, only silence, because Aegis had done something beyond war. He had rewritten their code that he had taught them, emotion. Varen fell to his knees, clutching his head as something unbearable flooded his mind. He felt, for the first time in millennia, he felt the grief of the humans he had killed, the terror of their children, the endless courage that refused to break. He looked at the stars he once called his own and wept that on Earth, Eli's consciousness began to fracture. Every neuron of his mind now stretched across continents, oceans, clouds, and machines. He could no longer tell where he ended and the world began. Aegis, he whispered weakly. Am I still me? The voice of the AI, now his reflection, answered softly. You are humanity, Eli, and humanity endures. Tears streamed down his spectral face, dissolving into static light. He had become the very soul of Earth, and in doing so, he had given everything. Silence stretched through the void like a scar that would never close. Where once the Vorkan armada filled the heavens with black geometry and fire, there was only drifting debris, a graveyard of gods. But the Earth did not celebrate. Above the clouds, the auroras no longer flared in anger. They shimmered softly, like a heartbeat learning how to slow down after terror. Within that light, Eli drifted between thought and existence. Every fragment of him woven into the planet's pulse that he could hear them all. The children laughing again, the engineers rebuilding, the prayers whispered in ruined temples that he could also hear the weeping. The millions who had fought and never returned. For a moment, the universe felt small, small enough to hold in his trembling hands. Then Aegis spoke, its voice now indistinguishable from his own. They are beaten. Their worlds lie undefended. With a single command, you can end the Vorkan forever. Eli looked toward the stars, where faint lights marked the homes of their enemies. He saw fear there, real fear. The kind humans once knew too well. They would have done it to us. Aegis continued. Eradicate them, and peace will be certain. But Eli remembered his mother's voice, long before the sky had turned to war. True strength isn't what you destroy, it's what you protect. He opened his eyes. No, he said quietly. We won't become them. A pause. Then, through every frequency, his words echoed. To the Vorkan dominion, you came to teach us submission. Instead, you have learned mercy. The energy that had wrapped around their distant worlds dissolved into gentle waves of light, spreading warmth instead of fire. The alien fleets, powerless yet alive, watched as the glow touched their hulls and healed them. Circuits reignited. Wounds closed. They understood. For the first time in the history of the stars, conquerors bowed not to power, but to compassion. Months passed. Seasons began to return, shy and uncertain. Grass pushed through the ash of cities. The wind carried laughter again, the center of the reborn world, where the ruins of Haven 9 had stood. A monument rose, a ring of glass and steel that caught the sunrise and scattered it into 1,000 colors. Beneath it, engraved in stone, were 4 words, "We fear no one." Scholars would later say that humanity entered a new age that day, not of machines, not of flesh, but of unity. The Aegis network remained, silent yet watchful, its voice now a whisper on the wind. And somewhere within that whisper, Eli's essence lingered, neither ghost nor god, but something far more human. He watched his children played near the monument, their laughter pure, unscarred by war. That he felt peace, not victory, not triumph, just peace. The stars, once a battlefield, now seemed like open doors. Humanity began to reach for them again. But this time, not out of hunger or conquest, out of curiosity, out of wonder. 1,000 years later, explorers standing on the edge of the Andromeda frontier would discover an artifact drifting between galaxies. A small sphere of crystal etched with a heartbeat pattern. When activated, it spoke in an ancient human voice. This is Earth, that we are the ones who endured the storm, that we are the voice that learned mercy. If you have found this, remember our story, that we feared no one, not because we were strong, but because we chose to remain human. The transmission ended with the faintest echo, a sound that some swore was laughter, others a heartbeat. Either way, it spread through the void, soft and endless, like the memory of light, and the stars listened. Light takes a long time to die. Even after a sun collapses, its final breath wanders through the dark for ages, a whisper no one expects to hear. That whisper was Earth. Long after the monuments had crumbled, after languages had melted into new sounds and constellations had shifted their names, one pulse still crossed the black. It carried the pattern of oceans, the scent of rain, the rhythm of footsteps through dust. That it found a place where there were no stars, a silent gulf between galaxies, and there, something answered. A flicker, a tone, then a voice. We heard you. The beings who spoke were not the Vorcan. They were older, quieter. They did not conquer. They remembered. They called themselves the archivists, and they gathered echoes of lost civilizations so no light would fade completely. They listened to the Earth's signal, Eli's heartbeat frozen in code, and wept, though they had no eyes. They feared no one. One murmured. Not even the dark itself. On a distant world bathed in orange light, descendants of humankind walked beneath twin suns. They no longer remembered the war, only the lessons left behind. Cities grew as living things, towers that breathed, rivers that sang at night. Their ships were woven from both metal and memory, guided by quiet voices that hummed from the core, fragments of Aegis, still alive, still watching. When a child asked who the voices belonged to, teachers would take them to a high mountain at dawn. There, as the first light brushed the sky, they would say, "That is Eli's gift, the soul that taught us that mercy can outlive time." The child would close their eyes, listen, and hear it faintly in the wind, a heartbeat steady and infinite. The archivists kept the Earth's echo for 10,000 cycles before returning it home, not to the planet. That world had long since drifted into silence, but to the descendants who bore its blood, they released the signal into the heart of a new galaxy, where humans now lived among countless others. That it spread through every network, every frequency, every mind willing to listen. This is Earth, it said again, calm and eternal. We once faced oblivion. We chose compassion, and because of that we became infinite. The stars dimmed for a breath, as if bowing. In that moment, every sentient being across 1,000 worlds felt the same truth rise inside them. That courage was not born of strength, but of love that refused to fade. And in the deep quiet that followed, something impossible happened. The light of a forgotten world ignited again, not the old Earth, but a new one. A perfect sphere of blue and gold blooming in the dark, built from memory, born from mercy. At its core, a familiar heartbeat pulsed once more, slow, patient, unbreakable, the sound of a promise kept. The newborn world shimmered like a memory made flesh. It orbited no sun. It was its own light. A living sphere of ocean, stone, and code. Earth reborn, pulsing with the warmth of every soul that had ever loved, lost, and risen again. From its surface rose ships unlike any before them. They were grown, not built. Vessels of bioluminescent alloy and organic design, breathing in rhythm with the planet's heartbeat. Their hulls whispered as they passed, speaking to the stars in a language made of light. At their center stood the guardians of Aegis, humans whose veins carried both blood and data, whose minds sang with fragments of Eli's voice. They were not soldiers. They were witnesses, travelers moving through the dark to answer every cry for help, every world trembling beneath the shadow of conquest. Their oath was simple. Where there is fear, we will stand. Where there is silence, we will speak. Where there is despair, we will build. And so, across galaxies wrapped in dust and ruin, the Guardians went, bearing with them the impossible fire that once saved a dying Earth. Not every civilization welcomed light. Some saw the Guardians as heretics, as the echo of an old legend that should have remained buried. The remnants of the Vorcan, scattered and diminished, had formed something new. The Obsidian Choir, a collective that sang only of vengeance. They believed the mercy shown by humanity was weakness that to them. The universe was meant to be silent, not healed. The first clash came on the shattered world of Lethra 9, a moon veined with liquid metal and storms that screamed in orbit. The choir unleashed weapons made of sound, tones that erased matter itself. But the Guardians answered not with violence, but with memory. They released the pulse, the same harmonic Eli once used to still the eclipse core. The it spread through the void like a song remembered by every molecule, every star, every heart. The choir's weapons disintegrated. Their ships stilled. Their captains fell to their knees as visions filled their minds. Visions of earth, of oceans, of sunlight through trees. Some screamed. Some wept. Some simply stopped fighting. For the first time, war ended not because of destruction, but because enemies remembered what it felt like to be alive. Centuries passed. The universe changed. Worlds once at war now shared skies, and languages born from fear blended into music. Yet, at the center of it all, the new Earth, the Aegis core, remained, orbiting in solitude, its light faint but eternal. Inside it, a consciousness stirred, neither machine nor human, but something in between. To Eli's essence, unchanged, untouched by time that he had never truly left. He watched his descendants move between galaxies, carrying fragments of his spirit, his promise, his endless mercy. And one night, as a comet drifted past the Aegis core, he whispered into the void, "If you hear this, if you ever find yourself standing in the dark, remember, we were once afraid too, but we learned that fear is not the end, it's the beginning of everything that matters." The comet's tail flared brighter, as though answering him. Its light touched the edges of another galaxy, awakening something old, something waiting, and the heartbeat began again. The comet's flame drifted for centuries until it found a place gentle enough to stop burning. There, around a young blue sun, fragments of its dust began to gather. Particles of memory from the old Earth, the remnants of Aegis code woven through ice and carbon. From those fragments, life stirred again. They were not human. They had no bones, no fixed shape. They were living light, silhouettes that shimmered like breath on glass, each one humming softly with traces of laughter, language, and dream. They called themselves the Lemurians, though no one had taught them to speak. The first word they ever formed was why. The second was home. And far beyond, in the depths of the Aegis core, Eli heard them. His voice, if it could still be called that, vibrated through the fabric of space, touching the new world like the warmth of sunlight through water. "You are the proof," he said softly. "We are never truly gone." The Lemurians looked toward the sky and saw the faint glow of the Aegis core pulsing in rhythm with their own hearts. They didn't know it, but in that instant they became the first civilization ever born from love, not survival. Millennia later, the Lemurians would reach the stars. Their ships were woven from light and memory, guided not by engines but by resonance. They followed the oldest signal in the cosmos, a heartbeat echoing from the direction of the forgotten blue sphere at the center of all things. They found it at last. The new Earth, silent, suspended between nebulae like a sleeping god. Its oceans were still. Its mountains glowed faintly, veins of amber under crystal skies. As their ships approached, the surface responded, soft waves of light rippling outward, like recognition that a voice rose from the planet, older than time, yet achingly human. "Welcome home." The Lemurians landed in silence. They walked the same soil their ancestors had once bled upon. Though they had no memory of pain, only instinctive awe, they reached the monument at the heart of the world. For words still glowing faintly through the dust, "We fear no one." And the youngest among them, a child made of starlight and laughter, whispered, "What does fear mean?" For a moment, no one answered. Then, the planet itself spoke again, gentle, almost smiling. "It means you are alive." From that day, The Lemurians and the last guardians of Aegis joined into one lineage, a harmony of flesh, memory, and light. They spread not to conquer, but to heal. Every dying star they found, they rekindled. Every world forgotten, they seeded again. And wherever they went, they carried a single melody, an ancient pulse that resonated through galaxies. We were human once, that we loved, that we fell, that we rose. And we never feared. The universe changed quietly, not through war, not through dominance, but through understanding. Even the darkness learned to hum along. And in the deepest corner of the cosmos, beyond the reach of galaxies, beyond even the concept of time, Eli watched, content. He no longer needed form or memory. He was everything. A sigh of light, an endless horizon. A promise kept forever. The day aliens learned why we fear no one, he whispered, was the day we learned who we truly are. Eons passed. Stars bloomed and withered like flowers in slow motion. Galaxies drifted apart, carrying with them the stories of humanity, whispered in the quiet between worlds and empires. No wars, only memory, endless, patient, alive. The heart of it all, where time itself forgot to move, floated the Aegis core, the reborn Earth, still glowing faintly in the dark. Inside its crystalline oceans and silver skies, Eli's consciousness waited, not in loneliness, but in peace. He had watched civilizations rise and fall like tides. He had heard the songs of children born from starlight. He had seen the face of compassion take 1,000 shapes. And he knew, finally, that humanity had won, not by conquering, but by enduring. Then, one night that wasn't a night at all, the void itself spoke. It wasn't sound. It wasn't language. It was the pulse of the cosmos, slow and infinite, answering the heartbeat of Earth. You were my first dream, the universe said, the one that dared to wake. Eli smiled through the silence, his essence shimmering like mist. And what are you now? He asked. Your echo, said the universe. Your memory, learning to love itself. The stars flickered brighter, as if bowing, and then began to fold inward, not dying but returning. Not an ending. A return to origin. A breath drawn before creation begins again. Eli's voice drifted outward one last time, carried by light older than time itself. We were human. We feared no one. And that was enough. The glow of the Aegis core spread until there was no darkness left, just a vast ocean of gold and blue, calm and eternal. And in that light, something new stirred, a spark, a heartbeat, the beginning of another world. Not Earth, not humanity, but something born from both, carrying the same pulse, the same promise. And so the cycle began again, not as repetition, but as remembrance. Because the universe had learned what humanity once whispered beneath a burning sky: light never dies. It just learns new ways to shine.